Well, we just told you the national debt has risen by more than $3 trillion since President Obama took office. Yes, this is the same President Obama who says we can't extend the Bush tax cuts due to the growing deficit. And if that seems like a paradox to you, you are not alone. Republican California Congressman Devin Nunes sits on the powerful Ways and Means Committee. He is also the author of Restoring the Public, which lays out his plan for fiscal responsibility. Welcome, Congressman. Great to see you, sir.
Thank you, Jerry. Thanks for having me on today.
All right. So, we're talking about this national debt rising. How can the Democrats run on this record? I mean, it just seems impossible to me that you could have this record and then brag about it as you're running for office.
Well, they can't run on their record, which in most cases across the country, they're in fact not running on their record, which is why you see them throwing everything up on the wall, including, I think, one guy in Florida calling his opponent Taliban Dan or something. Wow. I was listening to your promo, and I found it interesting that you're only talking about the debt that the Congress, through the budgeting process, actually realizes, not the real debt that America is truly accountable for when you look at all the new Obamacare, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security.
And how much debt is that?
Well, depending on who you listen to, but it's at least $60 trillion. And as high as $100 trillion.
Wow.
I mean, they're numbers that people don't even fathom, and in fact, the people's government is ignoring. And that's one of the things that myself and Congressman Paul Ryan from Wisconsin were trying to get people to focus on, that it's not just the debt that we talk about, it's also the debt that we're ignoring.
It is the debt we're ignoring. And, of course, on this show, we talk all the time about the cost of the entitlement program, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. I'll get to that in a second, but I do want you to talk about this issue of the debt, the recognized budget, if you want to describe it that way. I want to show some numbers on how the debt is rising and going up and what we're facing here. In fact, we've seen it go up $3 trillion, as you can see right there. As we begin to look at this, of course, the president says that this was the previous administration's fault. It was Bush's 2 terms in office. How much of that debt is really due, say, to the war?
Well, a considerable amount of it is roughly about a little over $1.5 trillion, I'm guessing at this point. But I think the point that you were making earlier is a correct one, and that is that President Obama in 3 to 4 years is going to spend more than the entire Bush years and perhaps even in the Clinton years when you look at the money that we've borrowed. If we let President Obama in for 8 years, he's going to borrow more money in 8 years than we borrowed in the entire history of our country.
That's amazing. What a statistic, right? Well, I think Congress is, and frankly, this Oval Office has been addicted to spending. Let me show you some numbers here. On the projected deficit, how it's going up as well. This is really going to rob our grandchildren, this deficit that's growing, the debt that this government is putting in place. What do we do about it, Congressman?
Well, the debt really is what I call eating our children. And the more that we ignore it, I just caution everyone, we're not out of the woods at all. I mean, this could, in fact, if we refuse to act, this could actually stop Social Security, Medicare, a lot of government programs in their tracks within the next 10 years. So it's not just about our children, it's not just about us, it's not just about our grandparents. The entire country is in trouble. And unless we realize that and put real plans out on the table. So, for example, Paul Ryan, very thoughtful guy. I've worked with him a lot on health care reform, Social Security reform, both Medicare and Medicaid, long-term budget strategies. We've put a plan out there on the table. And what's the first thing that they do? When I say they, President Obama, he attacks Paul Ryan. When you look at the Democrats, Nancy Pelosi and others, they say, well, look at these young guys. They're trying to take Granny's Social Security away, keep her out of the hospital. This is what we have to put up with when guys like us actually just put legitimate plans out there on the table. We don't say we have all the answers, but at least we have a plan. The rest of these people have no plan.
So tell me, what is the key to your plan, to paying off this debt, to getting it into shape, to making sure the federal budget isn't overblown and overstuffed?
Well, first off, if you're interested in this, if your viewers are interested, you can go to AmericanRoadmap.org. And what we do in there is we actually reform the tax code entirely. We reform Social Security. We reform the entire health care system. And basically what we say is we say the federal government is so completely inefficient and wasting so many tax dollars that we believe if we move those entitlements from bureaucrats in Washington and basically put them into the individual, where the individual takes care of their individual programs, and they can take care of it and manage it under the watch by the government, but not under government control. And that's really the key, I think, to basically increasing efficiency in the system so that we long-term balance the debt and pay and basically save our grandchildren from a disaster.
And how do you make sure that the government is really watching and not controlling, or at least keeping its attention, its eye on the ball? You know, the trouble that we saw with banks during the last market blow-up was that the regulators were asleep at the wheel.
Yeah, well, look, the Congress, I mean, the bailout's a whole other story, and that was total irresponsibility by the United States Congress and the politicians that supported the TARP bailouts. But when you look at the Social Security system, I laugh at when the politicians quickly criticize myself and others that want to reform Social Security, because in fact, all that we're proposing is exactly what all federal employees have for their retirement program, including members of Congress. So the members of Congress that criticize me and others are actually benefiting from the system that we're proposing, that they don't want to make available to the rest of the American public.
Congressman, thanks for your time today. You've got to come back. Loved having you on, sir.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. Anytime.
All right.